People who live in tin houses should never throw can openers. I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jim.
Welcome to issue number 131 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Each and every week we meet here on the internet to talk about comics. We are going to have a segment where we talk about our weekly reviews, talking about the books that we've been reading from the past. And then we have a special letters page section this week in which we are all going to share answers on the following question, which is, what is the most underrated genre in comics? So start thinking of your answers now. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But first, we're going to kick it off here with our weekly reviews. I'm just going to reach for my book here. Okay, here we go. I am talking about Archie's First in Dark Horse Archives Special Edition. What's cool about this book here, this is collecting comics from the 1940s through the 1950s from Archie Comics. You're seeing the original origins of Archie himself in Pep Comics, which was Pet Comics number 22 from 1941. Since the first appearance of the freckle-faced teenager named Archie Andrews 70 years ago, it's even longer now since that was printed on this hardcover, in the pages of Pep Comics, generations of readers have grown to love the antics of the redhead from Riverdale. This special edition Dark Horse Archive collects the first appearance of Archie and his closest pals, and its remastered versions of the original comics. So, what's awesome about this, it's presented in a nice, sweet hardcover, and you can always appreciate when you take the dust jacket off. This one is an awesome Riverdale High School sort of yearbook presentation. It's got a nice little glossy logo there, so it looks like it's a Riverdale High School yearbook. So that's pretty cool.
Signed?
Yeah, it says, "Have a nice summer" from Reggie Mantle. I got Moose to sign this. Midge signed it. I got Betty, Veronica, Jughead. His dog Hot Dog even put his paw on it, so that's pretty cool. I got one of my favorite teachers, Miss Grundy, to sign it. She put a couple hearts on there and said, "Have a nice Grundy." So yeah, what this comic is collecting is pretty cool, seeing all of how these characters were originally created. And what's cool reading comics that are like over 70 years old for the Archie style is that all of the same storytelling themes are still present today when they tell updated stories in the current Archie style. So it's crazy how much of these stories still hold up. There's a couple references when you see like a phone booth or something like that you're definitely going to be like, well, that's kind of a, really specifies what time it is. But the actual...
Time for Clark Kent to change into Superman.
Yeah, it might be in here somewhere. But I think it's a testament to the Archie creators on how well they continue to tell these, 4 to 5 page comical little short stories. There are several chapters in here which each focuses on different characters. So you kind of see all of their all their different story origins with all the characters collected. So yeah, it's a pretty fun collection. It really kind of shows you what the creative minds were like back in 1941. Before seeing that, I bet you they wouldn't predict that it would last as long as it did, and the fact that people are still collecting and celebrating these stories. So yeah, this is a very good collection if you're looking for old classic Archie, but remastered and colored in this special Dark Horse collection. So they have the Dark Horse Archives special editions with a couple more that I've got in to read pile here, but I wanted to start with the first. So there it is, Archie First. Next up, Damon.
Well, I wanted to start something different, and unfortunately I was very busy this week, so I didn't get to read too much of it, but I started to read the Aquaman Omnibus by Jeff Johns. I believe this is the new 52 run, and the Omnibus starts with issue number 1. Now, I only read the first story arc, which is called The Trench, but it was a lot of fun. I'd never read any Aquaman stuff. My only exposure to Aquaman was the movie, which I thought was pretty decent. But the book takes things in a different light. In the book, it seems like the world thinks Aquaman is kind of a joke. It's kind of funny. They don't know what to make of him. Like, he swings in to save the day of an armored car robbery, and the cops are like, what are you doing here? And then one cop goes, do you need a glass of water or something? And
you eat fish?
Yeah, and he's like, no. And then he afterwards, after he saves the day, he walks into a seafood restaurant, and they're like, well, you can't eat here. You talk to fish. And he's like, no, I do not talk to fish. And it's like no one takes him serious. This story arc is called The Trench, and this was pretty cool. If you remember those creatures from the movie, if you've seen the movie that come up from the trench, well, they come up looking for food, and they steal half a town that's right on the coast. The artwork in here is just great. And what they actually do is they can cocoon the townspeople to bring them back to the trench.
Ooh.
And like this full page, it's hard to see on that. You can see like the reflection in the eyes of like Aquaman as he swims towards them. The art in here is just awesome. And so he and Mera swim down to the trench to do battle. There's some real cool, where's the page I'm looking for? Don't want to show too much, but like here's some nice action scenes with like Aquaman fighting the trench creatures. Same with Mera. And they go down, and I don't want to spoil the end of the arc, but they find out that it's not just the regular creatures that are down there. They have a giant queen, and that's something else that they have to deal with. And so this arc is about 4 issues long, and like here's a scene, a full page splash page of all the creatures and some of the pods that townspeople are in, deep down under the ocean in the trench. It was a lot of fun, a lot of action. I like the sarcasm. You know, they don't take him serious. He just kind of shrugs it off. I know they borrowed a lot from this book when they made the movie. At least that's what I've heard. The book is supposed to be great. The art is great. I'm looking forward to finishing it. I just haven't had the time this week. Otherwise, I was trying to knock out about half of it this week. But the first arc, The Trench anyways, which is issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the new 52 Aquaman, was a lot of fun. I recommend them.
And how many issues are total in that collection? Do you know?
The Omnibus collects Aquaman 0 through 19, 21 to 25, 23.1, 23.2, and Justice League 15 to 17. So basically everything by Jeff Johns.
Cool. All right, let's run over to David's pick.
All right. What I've got here is I think this is the first trade paperback I ever bought.
Oh.
That is the greatest Flash stories ever told. Picked this up in my fairly early days of reading. I'd have to look and see when this was actually first published. But like most greatest whatever stories ever told, I'd have to argue that they're probably not the greatest Flash stories ever told. It's really just a collection of representations, and maybe that's all that they were really going for, was some good representations of the Flash. And it covers Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, and Wally West as the Flash, starting out with a few stories of Jay Garrick, and you can read his early Golden Age origin, and realized that you know, if it weren't for smoking cigarettes and trying to impress a girl, he wouldn't be the man he turned out to be. So, it's just by taking a smoke break. Taking a little smoke break is what causes his accident that gives him his superpowers. And of course, like all good superheroes, he doesn't abuse his. Oh wait, actually, he uses it because it become a football superstar. Actually, and then he decides to help people and save the day. But at least eventually he gets on the right track and becomes the fastest man alive, who kind of sort of hides his identity. I think later they explain his as vibrating his facial features so fast that he can't be recognized. Of course, his longtime girlfriend and later wife, Joan, knew right from the get-go. So he didn't have that problem that Barry Allen had with always trying to, hide his identity from her, and had somebody to help cover up when he had to disappear and things like that. Golden Age stories are always a little difficult to read sometimes, just because they're so simple and outdated. But it can be fun. I enjoy reading them from time to time in little bits and pieces here and there. Then it moves on to Barry Allen's origin story and some of his origins. Interestingly, one of Jay Garrick's villains was the Turtle, who did a lot of crimes based on being slow, and would have some tricks to slow down Jay Garrick. And in the very first Barry Allen story actually features a very similar villain who's just called the Turtle. And he does kind of a similar thing. He uses the slow stuff, and both of them in these stories, actually, the one from Jay Garrick and the one from Barry Allen with these similar villains, uses similar technique. There's one part in each story where the villain actually tricks the hero into running fast and crashing into something. So there's you see some similarities in it, and of course there is Jay Garrick did not exist in the same continuity, and to explain that, they just simply have that he was a comic book character. That was up until I forget which issue of the Flash that was. Eventually they actually put them together, the Flash of Two Worlds, which introduced Earth 2, the Earth 1, Earth 2 concept, which went for a number of years also. And you don't get much of the Wally West Flash in here. There's only one Wally as the Flash story, and that's the last one in here. And not his greatest Flash story. The Wally West represented in here is kind of the Wally that a lot of people didn't like when he first took over as the Flash. He wasn't very popular. A lot of people kind of grew to dislike Wally, yelled for years that they wanted Barry back. And then, of course, later on, Barry became a better hero and a better character. And by the time they brought Barry back, a lot of people were like, hey, we're good with Wally. Just let Barry be dead, So this does have a number of stories, though, for Jay Garrick and Barry Allen that give good representations of what their earlier comics were like. There you go. Greatest Flash stories ever told. Oh, they do have a only for Barry. They don't have his final story in here, which is complicated because they kind of ended his run more or less in the Crisis. But they do have a section in here where they kind of break down the end of the Flash, his final Flash storyline, and then you can just read about that if you have an interest in what happened. Unfortunately, they don't have that storyline in here because they're just single issue stories that they kind of piece together. But it's kind of interesting to go through if you haven't read any of those comics to be able to learn about that transition, what happened to Barry, and how Wally became the Flash.
All right. Good. Let's move on over to Kirby.
I decided to read Daredevil Ninja, 3 comic book run from Marvel Knights. Bendis and the Queens did this one. You got Matt Murdock is reintroduced his sensei, Stick, in this run. And he gets the only thing he has left of his master we've seen die is his master's stick. And some ninjas come in, steal the staff or the stick, and take off with it, and he has to go traveling across, chasing after them, trying to find what's going on and why they took it, who took it. It's got nice little, each one's got a little Stan Lee movie sequence scene start in there. Standard artwork, Marvel artwork for in here, and they gets him into a situation with some ninjas, and then he has to hunt them down, and he runs into one of Stick's other students, Stone. So Sticks and Stones may break your bones, but ninjas can't hurt you, or whatever. Can't hurt Daredevil. But Stone requests Daredevil's help because the hand is back, and Daredevil thought the hand was gone. And it's a fun little story if you want to get caught up on Daredevil and some different things. I know I just have little parts of Daredevil all over, and I know a lot about with the hand and stuff like that. So I know nothing about Stone. That was one of his sensei's other students. But yeah, it's nice little 3-run story, quick read. I don't think you need to know anything to go into this. If you aren't anything with Daredevil, right, they give you the basic synopsis in the beginning with the hand and the stuff. And then for all, yeah, it's not going to be in there. I had it set up. And for all the kids, just remember, tobacco is wacko.
Although, while taking a smoke break, you can knock over some chemicals and get super speed.
Might get some superpowers out of it in the long run. Never know. Get out there and grab that crack pipe and that cigarette and see what happens. Jump around some chemicals. But yeah, it was a fun run to get me just updated with some Daredevil stuff.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Sounds good. Let's jump over to Katie.
So today I am working on a big volume again. It's another Star Wars epic collection. It's called Rise of the Sith, Volume 1. All the events in this book take place before the Phantom Menace.
Did everybody freeze up? Is anybody still there?
There we go. Inside their lives.
And who published this one?
This was published by Boom, and I believe the date was originally 2012.
Okay, because I recognize the artist Russell Dauterman, who was doing the Mighty Thor run with Jane and everything. So I was just kind of curious with a lot of DC-esque takes on things. I was kind of curious who was printing that one.
And the name of the writer is Grace Randolph, and she has written other comics, mostly like I think it was like stuff for IDW, where it was like I forget exactly what's titles because I didn't read them, but I know her name from her YouTube channel, where she is she has a couple of YouTube channels where she does movie reviews, and she talks about, like, every week she talks about the releases. It's called Movie Math. She tells how the movies did each week and that kind of thing. So you might know her from that.
I'm sorry, Jim. What book are you talking about again?
Supurbia.
Oh, okay.
And I read the whole series back when a couple of years ago, and now it's, you know, just a reread to fill time right here with nothing else coming out.
Cool. All right. The next title that I am going to be talking about here is going into my stacks here back in 1989. This is from Detective Comics number 604, 05, 06, and 07. A story called The Mud Pack, which is revolving around a story about Clayface. And what's cool about Clayface is that there are several different Clayfaces in the DC Comics universe, and this is focusing on the majority of them. This story was taken place right after, I think, Clayface 2. Matthew Hagen died in Crisis, I believe, just from some context clues of what they were saying. But essentially, this is a story where Clayface number 3, I think, Preston Payne, he is breaking out of Arkham, and we have another Clayface, which is the Basil Carlo, who is running around doing something mysterious. And then we have Clayface number 4, which is Lady Clayface, Sandra, let's see here, Sandra Fuller, I think. She's running off doing her own separate story. So when you're reading the first issue 604 here, it's kind of interesting, kind of figuring out, like, okay, what's happening, because you're seeing a lot of shape shifting going on, and I'm kind of under the speculation that it's just one Clayface, and then you eventually find out that it is all of them minus Matthew Hagen's character of Clayface. Are basically trying to join together so they can stop Batman. So 3 Clayfaces, Clayface I, are better than Batman, hopefully, you know, and that's part of the whole plan. As you go through this 4-issue arc, you are dealing, you're kind of seeing one of the Clayface characters has an ulterior motive, and you'll find that out as the story unfolds. But the one that I really liked a lot, seeing Lady Clayface, because all 3 of these different Clayface characters have different abilities, different things that they can do as the character. And it seems that Lady Clayface might have one of the most advantage to being the character, because she absorbs a lot of the powers and ability. So she transforms into the Looker, which is one of the characters from The Outsiders, if I'm not mistaken. The Looker, who has these telepathic type telekinesis powers that are going on. And so she's portraying herself as the Looker the majority of the time. There's moments where she's portrayed herself as Batman, so it kind of sheds a bad light on him when Batman's beating up the cops, but it's actually Lady Clayface. And then there is a moment that is very close to home of who she turns into when fighting Batman. I'll leave that for anybody interested in the story yet. But yeah, I would say this is a pretty good introductory point, because like I said, that first issue really kind of has you guessing until you find out the little history that, okay, there are multiple people that have been Clayface. So I don't know this story pretty much exists within its own continuity. It's not playing on any grander story arc that had happened before, you know, with me just kind of jumping in at, you know, at these 4 issues here. It definitely reads as an awesome, complete story. But yeah, I've always been a pretty big fan of Clayface, and I definitely have not read near everything that has been written for the character. But I think this was a really good sampler platter, since you got a little bit of everybody minus Matthew Hagen. And then a bonus is that 2 of the issues have these Batman posters in there that you can pull out. And So that's pretty cool. Little extra bonus there, but yeah,
You
Detective
should hang that on
Comics.
the wall.
Yeah, I can tear it out right now.
Yeah.
Is Kurt here? Kurt's not here. I'll wait.
He might
I'll
be
wait.
later. It's YouTube.
Okay. Yep. I'll tear both of those out later then. But yeah, Detective Comics is specifically right around this issue numbering, and in 1989 is when I started reading comics for the first time. So I had picked these up. I don't even remember, some back issue bin somewhere, but I finally got around to reading them, seeing it was only 4 issues, and yeah, it was definitely a good read if you're into Clayface. Once again, a great sampler platter for the majority of the people that have portrayed the character, but my favorite is Basil Karlow, the former actor, and the one that's been recently used in the Detective Rebirth issues that put him on the good side for a while. But yep, good stuff. So
Did
that
What's the numbering on that again, Anthony?
say that again.
What is the numbering on that?
604 through 607.
And for fans of Batman the Animated Series, that version of Clayface was a combination. They used the name Matt Hagen, and then I always want to say Boris Karloff, but
That's probably a play on it, though, Basil Karlow.
But they used his appearance and everything, and they completely skip out on probably the least known version of it, Lady Clayface, or Clady Face, as I like to say.
But yeah, good stuff. So yeah, 604 to 607, Detective Comics. If you get all 4 of those, you get 2 free full-color Batman mini posters, unless you're buying from back issue bin and somebody ripped them out. Thankfully, this person didn't. They saved that for me. All right, we are going to jump right over to Kirby again for the next title.
All right, sticking with the martial arts, I decided to check out some Kato comics since Kevin Smith had the Kato comics in the preview catalog that I didn't even know he was doing or did. So the first one was a run of 4. Yeah, basically, the Beijing regime is moving to destroy the Shaolin Temple, and Sifu, Uncle Ho, sends a letter to Kato asking for his help. So some Chinese soldiers are attacking the Shaolin Temple, and Kato was retrieved from America to help the monks take down the attackers, and that the monks are from the temple where Kato was basically trained and taught everything he now knows. And so he goes out there, gets sucked into a movie concept. They basically want him to start making movies for him. For the Chinese socialists want Kato making the movies for him instead of making them for Western culture. And then the movies are basically based about how the Chinese take down the idiot Westerners, and they kidnap a couple of the monks, and he has to sneak in and try and help get them out of the prisons during the making of the movie and stuff. It says, I don't know how true it is or not, but it says on one of the pages that it's translated from Mandarin Chinese. This was done in 1991 from Now Comics. I don't know how true that is, but some of the writing is a little rough, so I can see it totally be translated. And but the storyline still kept me going. It was fun. It was a different outlook on Kato. I didn't realize he was so much like Bruce Lee outside from the Green Hornet stuff I knew him from. Because in this, it makes him look basically like Bruce Lee making movies in America and not really doing anything with the Green Hornet. But that was fun, and like Anthony, I got to show off stuff because I do have one copy here that's the number 4 signed by Mike Barron.
Ooh.
Now, do you think maybe they wanted to make a Bruce Lee comic, but they couldn't, so they're like, you know what?
It's
We'll
a
go
very good
Kato.
possibility because, like it says, it was translated from Mandarin Chinese. So over there, they may not have been able to do something with Bruce Lee. And Kato looks, I mean, it's basically Bruce. It's
Yeah.
we put Bruce right next to there. And
Nice.
it's the same exact picture. So it's like, but this is Kato, but it's very, it could have went either way. And then I also read Kato 2, which this one was a fun one about a rock band. They start out playing their performance. All of a sudden, someone jumps on stage and attacks the lead singer, tries to kill him. So the bodyguard jumps in. The bodyguard gets killed instead. The cops come in. They chase him off, and he disappears. So, yeah, they have more concerts to follow up with coming up and a couple big ones. So the concert venue hires Kato to be the bodyguard for the lead singer. And he hops in, starts out, lead singer, of course. Notices Kato, loves his work, loves his movies. That's why they wanted to hire him. Gets him, instead of having him drive the limousine, has him hop in the back seat, has his sidekick jump in and drive the limousine, and he starts chopping up lines on a mirror and offers Kato a line. And Kato's like, sure, I'll take all the lines, grabs the thing, tosses it out the window. Guy gets all ticked off because he's throwing his drugs away. And it was a little frivolous because he does it a couple other times. And you may be stopping this guy from doing the drugs, but Kato keeps throwing him out the car window. And one of the times he wants him to shoot up, so Kato takes the 2 needles and the heroin and tosses it out the window so some little kid could end up grabbing it. So that's not a good thing. But you are protecting the rock star from overdosing, I guess. But it goes on with story. The band keeps getting attacked. Kato keeps helping out. Other people get killed and stuff. I don't want to spoil everything for it, but it does have a fun outcome that you don't quite expect. And the monks kind of help out in this also in the end. So if you like Green Hornet, this is a whole different look to check out. And it's from 1991 through Now Comics. I'm looking forward to reading the Kevin Smith ones now that I read this. Now that there's a whole different type of separate story. It has nothing to do with teaming up and fighting up. So,
And you can check out the one about Kato's son. It's called The Crow.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we will move right over to Jim.
All right. The other thing I'm talking about today is called Deadman, Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love. After last week's question about what is the most romantic comic book, it made me recall that I had read this, so I went back to read it again. And it is a kind of a romantic story because it is a house of forbidden love. Deadman gets trapped in this mansion. Normally he's free to go wherever he wants, but there's something getting him stuck here. There is a young couple, Bernice and Nathan, who he has inherited this mansion, and they don't like living there, but he's gone there to write this book, and they're in seclusion while he does that. She spends her time going into town, visiting the antique shops, and bringing the place back up to specs, you know, decorating everything and whatever. And she meets this person who runs the antique shop, Sam, and they're bringing some stuff back to the mansion when Deadman hears a cry of distress, and he is able to get into the mansion, but then is never able to get out again. Bernice is able to actually see ghosts, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" You know, that kind of thing. You know, and he's like, "You can see me?" When he tries to possess her, he gets repelled, and she, you know, like she knows about it, and she like doesn't like it, and so they end up working together to find out that there is another ghost in the house, and more than just a ghost, there's a dark presence. This ghost has been there for 150 years. She was murdered on her wedding night in the house. And every time the ghost appears, Nathan, Bernice's fiance, suffers some kind of migraine attack, and they're getting worse and worse all the time. Her friend Sam and Deadman are connect with the ghost, Amelia, who has been there. And Amelia sometimes is very friendly and helpful, and other times she's the one that is turning into this black energy, and then it makes chaos happen. Eventually, we discover that they are absolutely related. That the black chaos and Nathan's attacks are absolutely connected, and that is because the book that Nathan has been working on is not just a novel, it is a spell book, which is binding Amelia to the house so that he can go out and continue living his life, which he has been living for the last 150 years, because he is actually Edward Ruskin, the man who married and killed her, which he did to preserve his life. So
such a romantic story.
Yes, such a romantic story. However, there is another romance going on beyond that. Sam, who identifies as non-binary, Bernice corrects Deadman when he says, "I don't know what she's about." She says, "No, that Sam is a they." So even back 5 or 6 years ago when this first came out, that was an issue that they were talking about already then. It seems like the they pronoun has only been for the last couple of years, but no, it's been a little bit longer than that. So, yeah, this was that. So there's a little bit of a will they kind of relationship going on with Bernice and Sam then, and behind the scene. Eventually, yes, they do manage to destroy Nathan, and actually not just destroy the house, they banish the house. There is a big hole where the house once was because of all the negative magic energies. Once that was released, the house is gone. Bernice is free to go, and Deadman is free to go on doing what he was. He's not freed from his mission, but he's not trapped in the house any longer. And Bernice and Sam are free to do whatever they want to do. So this was a 3-issue book, and I believe I've seen it issued as a trade paperback also since then. I can't confirm the dates, but it is from DC, and again, it's Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love. The writer is Sarah Vaughn. The art is Lan Medina, and Jose, I'm probably going to get this wrong, Villarrubia is the coloring. And what I found interesting was Stephanie Hans did the covers, which for me now, I recognize that name as being the artist of the Die comic, which is I'm also a fan of. So I didn't realize that until just now when I went back and reread them, that she was doing that. But yeah, that was kind of cool. So.
And I recognize the Sarah Vaughn name. I just had to double check from co-writer of Alex and Ada and Eternal Empire.
Yep.
2 books I really dug as well. So, cool. All right. We'll move over to the last pick here, which is up to me with his Young Avengers. This is the Sidekicks, the first volume of the Young Avengers story. In the wake of Avengers Disassembled, a mysterious new group of teen superheroes appears with powers and names resembling classic Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk. But who are they? Where did they come from? And what right do they have to call themselves the Young Avengers? When the Young Avengers' public actions draw the attention of Captain America and Iron Man, the old Avengers set out to learn the truth about their teenage namesakes. Caught between a maniacal supervillain and their heroic idols, will the Young Avengers' first fight be their last stand? All right, so I have never read this. I've been a big fan of the Kate Bishop Hawkeye when she was brought into the Fraction and AHA. Whoop, I got to get that. Just got a phone call here. Yep. Oh, yeah. It was the Matt Fraction. AHA. Okay, good. Okay, back at it. I read Kate in that Hawkeye series, and I was super excited to actually read her origin story, so I picked up the trades. I have to read the second batch yet, which is Family Matters. See if Steve Urkel joins the team or not, you know. But but with this one here, it starts off with the Young Avengers already formed, and everyone's kind of reacting to who these superheroes are, even the Avengers themselves. And they're doing good. They resemble the original Avengers, but they're completely unrelated characters and people that we find out throughout this 6-issue story here. It is all, this first Sidekicks volume is focusing on mostly Iron Lad, who we find out is Kang the Conqueror, but this is the young version of him who has come to this time, and he's trying to basically stop himself from becoming King the Conqueror. But when you're dealing with King the Conqueror stories, you're dealing with tons of time travel, timey-wimey stuff. So there's just a lot of, you see Kang, the old Kang, show up to try to bring the young Kang back, and he's trying to restore everything. And there's a lot of that crazy stuff going on, but it's cool seeing these young heroes kind of reacting to this giant storyline of like, wait, time travel's a thing. You get some Jessica Jones in here, which is pretty cool. She's kind of dealing with the ground level stuff and working with the original Avengers as they try to figure out what to do about these young heroes. They ultimately want to sideline them. They want to, quote unquote, train them in a way of just telling them to stop fighting and until they figure out what they can do. The other character that isn't one of the original Young Avengers members is Cassie Lang, Scott Lang's daughter, in a world where Scott Lang is dead in this story, and she is going to the original Avengers mansion basically to collect all of her father's things, and that's how she gets kind of enrolled into this. But yeah, it's some cool reading material I've always wanted to have the time to get to. Finally did since I started reading Kate Bishop Hawkeye, and I'm excited to see some of these characters here. This could be one of the possible directions they take for a storyline in the upcoming MCU projects, as we saw Cassie Lang get older in Endgame. We know we're getting Kate Bishop in a Disney Plus series. We have the other characters of like Hulkling and Patriot that, there isn't any evidence of that yet, but if they did a Young Avengers in the MCU, they don't, necessarily have to do all of these characters, but it seems like there is an avenue for them to kind of work with some of these younger heroes and have the elder statesmen of the Avengers kind of deal with a young uprising of people kind of spirited from the actions that the Avengers do in the heroic natures of their team. But yeah, this is definitely a very fun read, a very good introductory point, even though it's coming off of Avengers Disassembled. You don't need to know anything about that other than the fact that there are no current Avengers right now. And so it's kind of cool just following these young heroes as they kind of find their place in the superhero world. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to read the second volume there to continue on with the stories. And most importantly, just kind of keep following Kate's storyline, catching up to where I would eventually read her in, like, I don't know if it was like 2010 or 12 or something like that, maybe. So yeah, good stuff there. Young Avengers by Alan Heinberg and Jim Chung. Awesome collection. There they are. And that will do it for our weekly reviews. But stick around, everybody. We're going to move over to the letters page. And for those...
Record short one this week, huh?
Yeah, so make your answers long here.
I don't.
Well, and the YouTube version will be even shorter.
Yeah. And speaking of the YouTube version, they don't get the awesome page turning sound effects that some people thought were bong noises for some reason. But here we go for those YouTube viewers.
I don't hear
Sounds
nothing.
like Jim laughing.
When I originally recorded those years ago, I used some giant omnibuses as I thought that would catch Damon's attention, but he's still looking in different directions. Omnibuses. Oh, there he is. But yeah, so yeah, that is the transition of the segment. We are going to save it over on the audio and start up in 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome to the letters page. We are going to address a very crucial question for this week, and all of the members of the comic club here are going to talk about it. This week's question is, what is the most underrated genre in comics? Now, to kind of set it off, I think what inspires this question is that a lot of people think that comic books are strictly superheroes, capes and tights. That's often, I would definitely say that's the majority of the nature of comic books and what people look at it. But as you see adaptations in the movies and television shows, Amazon, Netflix, doing all of these comic book properties, it seems like everything's being scooped up nowadays. You're seeing that, there are so many things that originate from a comic that you wouldn't even know. So many different genres beyond the superhero realm. So we're going to go around here. Damon, do you have an answer if you want to kick us off?
No. I haven't read enough different genres. I usually stay within my couple, and that's so I can't really give an honest opinion. So
to throw that, to react to that, what would you think is the most underread genre to you then that you haven't read? Because you're like a superhero and horror guy, would be kind of the two realms you kind of play in. What would you think is one genre of comic books that is underappreciated by you, just by the lack of reading? Archie comics, probably.
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Is Archie its own genre?
Oh, it is now. Because if you need some Archie comics to read, I have some in hardcover too. I know how much you like hardcovers. No answer to that though either.
Nah, not really.
Not unless you put Buffy inside one of them.
David, do you have an answer?
Yes. The superhero genre is probably the most underrated of all the genres. No, in all seriousness, last year it was reported that for the first time since superheroes took off, was not the number one genre. Or it probably was overall. I don't know how they get the numbers, but other comics that were non-superhero outsold the superhero genre.
Well, that's like 50 genres to one. So
I think Abby wants to give her input here. What's that? Cat comics, she says.
Cat comics.
These cat comics have been very underrated. I was going to say, jokingly, romance, because that's come up a couple of times. Interestingly, and I don't know how, if they really even do all that romance, but there was a time that you had genres that were a lot more popular than what they are now, and romance comics were a thing for a while. And
cats and romance, you can animal husbandry.
And I think
On Kitty.
Her name escapes me now. She's currently a superhero known as Hellcat.
Yep.
And
Patsy Walker.
Yeah, Patsy Walker. She actually started out as in kind of that genre. Patsy Walker had nothing to do with superheroes. You know, she had her own comic and kind of like an Archie comic type of deal, a little bit kind of in there. And those got less popular, and superhero comics took off, and so they eventually, and it was quite a bit later that they worked Patsy Walker back into comics, and she became a superhero, Hellcat. Western comics was another genre that used to be huge, you know, as far as comics go. They were definitely more popular than superheroes, but the superhero genre came in. War comics, that was a genre, still is, of course, but these are genres that were kind of taken over by the superhero genre. So I guess even more sci-fi things based on serials like Flash Gordon and stuff like that. A lot of them just kind of went and became more superhero-like.
Cool. Kirby?
Yeah, with the superheroes, you basically, they were huge, and then the westerns, the combat, all that came in, then the superheroes crossed over with all that. And nowadays, you got every genre you could think of. And it's like there's something out there for everybody, but I guess I couldn't really think of anything, but if just off the hand of what I'd like to really see is some more wrestling comics that kind of crossed into other things other than just focusing on the wrestling part of it and their character itself, and just sit there and just get some of the older crew in there like Al Snow with Head. You could do an excellent little horror comic with that.
Like a story of like Macho Man trying to pay his mortgage or something.
Get a little Spike Dudley out there and stuff.
Something more like Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, the comic.
They did those though. They did bring wrestling into the rock world and stuff.
But you know, and when it wasn't about, it was about wrestlers, but they weren't wrestling. You know,
I want to see wrestlers that go off and act like they're CSI guys or something like that, or Men in Black, or I want to see a little mix up of their different genres. And
the Undertaker actually working as an Undertaker.
Yeah.
That is a cool idea. I actually dig that.
Gardner.
And bring back Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
Oh, Undertaker. Good. All right, move over to Katie.
All right. I am also going to say romance comics because while I think they're doing quite well actually in anime and manga, I don't see a ton of them in American style comics. And I'd actually be interested in learning about the genre of romance comics and maybe finding out what is still around today. So yeah, I'm going with romance comics. And also now I really do want an Undertaker as an Undertaker comic. We need to make that happen. So.
Do you think romance comics would do better if they were more like romance novels and they had like Fabio on all the covers? And
no, I do not. Do you?
I wouldn't buy any more of them.
Isn't that called Thor?
Fair enough.
Put Jason Momoa on those covers or something. So.
I mean, we could. We could just call him Aquaman then. But yeah, we could do that. So why not?
Excellent. Jim?
I was thinking about this. I was thinking literature. It used to be a lot bigger, that people would take classic or even popular literature and turn it into a comic book. There is still some of that, but I don't see a whole lot of it when I go through the previous catalogs anymore.
No, older
It used
stuff
to be
though. I got a whole stack of old Gold Key comics that are all based on stories like that.
The old ones, but there's not much going on anymore. So I know recently in the last year I did buy a copy of the Iliad as a graphic novel. So there is some, but there's not a lot, and I think that could probably bridge a gap for people, you know, that want to get the stories but don't want to put the whole time into reading a giant 800-page Greek drama, you know.
Yeah, it's
That
quite
might
an
be
undertaking.
I actually really like the idea. So, what maybe story, whether modern or classic, would you adapt to a graphic novel?
Would I specifically? Specifically? Would I do it?
Sure. Yeah. Do you have anything in mind? It's not at school.
Well, there's a book that I've always wanted to read but never got around to because it is so big, and Gone with the Wind. I've seen the movie. Always wanted to read the book, but you know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I agree.
War and Peace.
Also would love that. That would be so helpful.
Well, even the
some of these
book ever published has been turned into a graphic novel. The Bible.
Yeah. Yes, I do have one of those.
The Action Bible?
Yeah, I think that's actually what it's called.
Yeah.
It's very timely. This is actually on my stack to read from Michael and Laura Allred. They took a year off of comics and they did a self-publishing, The Golden Plates, which is a comic book adaptation of the Book of Mormon. They did.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, they did 6 issues of it in 3 kind of mini trade paperback volumes, and it's actually literally the next thing I'll be reading, so it kind of fits into that same aspect. I do like that question that Katie proposed, so I'll go with my answer, and then we can kind of go around if you have a piece, like let's say it was a movie series or a book series or something that just seems too daunting to sit down and have to read or watch everything, what may be more entertaining to just devour as a comic. So to finish off this first round here with the genre, there's a reason I went last, and it kind of goes off of David's answer as well, is the fact that there's a comic for everybody. So I think all genres that aren't superhero comics are the underrated genres in comic books. It always goes back to a story I've told many a times. If there's any new viewers and listeners, early on at the Crimson Cowl, we had a lady in there that was in for the newspaper advertising, something like that. And she had said how she had never, read a comic and wasn't into comics or anything like that. And I had said, like, oh, well, there's a comic for everybody. And it was a half a second later, she goes, oh, look, Nancy Drew. And the follow-up to that is, no, she didn't end up buying it, but she was intrigued to see that there was a Nancy Drew comic book.
Surprised to see that there actually was a comic book that she would know what it was, and it wasn't like just a superhero comic book.
Yeah, and I think that's like one thing, like with the superhero comics being around for, up to 80 years, is that it's a very daunting, it's very intimidating to look at something just being like, I want to read Spider-Man, and be like, where do I start reading Spider-Man from? There's, 700 #1 series out there, and there's this and that, and it can be, that could be a way people get turned off from reading comics, just not even knowing where to start. But when you realize you have different genres, comedies and romances and horrors, and where you can just suggest a simple trade paperback from an independent publisher that has nothing to do with anything, being like, oh, do you like Law and Order, the TV show? Well, there might be, here's a police procedural type of comic that would get a lot of people into comics if those were a little more well known. It's definitely getting better once again with the adaptations and stuff, but overall, that's my answer, is that every other genre. And yeah. Now, to go off of what Katie brought up to the table, what would be something that I personally would want to see as a comic book? I would say let's adapt the Harry Potter books into a comic book. Now, I love and own the movies, seen them in theaters. I've never cracked open the books just because I look at that and just being like, all right, that's a lot to read that I don't have time to read. But if they were in condensed comic book versions, that would be something that I think would be very interesting. Kind of like the Game of Thrones ones, where the Game of Thrones comics are adapting novels, not necessarily the TV show. And that's a way where I've read the first volume of that and stuff. So I would say Harry Potter, because that's one thing. If I had unlimited time and had no other distractions and just burned through those books, I think a comic book version of that would be perfect.
I have good news for you.
What?
Oh, I was going to say, so there's a middle ground. So a few years ago, they started releasing the Harry Potter books in kind of like an oversized format, but effectively as fully illustrated picture books, where they have these gorgeous illustrations and pictures and still have the text on each page. Now they're like coffee table book size, but they're hardcover and really beautiful. Like I've given them as gifts, and the people that are so they're really big Harry Potter fans anyway. But even people who are just like casual fans or know about it are like, oh my god, that looks so nice. So that'd be a really nice middle ground. And they're usually like, I think you can get them for $30 on Amazon, and I don't know what they retail for, but that could be a nice middle ground in case you really are interested. I think they're up to at least book 4.
Yeah, I just typed it in for Harry Potter graphic novel. Harry Potter, the Illustrated Collection, books 1 to 3, hardcover, $65. Original price, $120.
That's a really good deal.
Yeah, and that looks pretty sweet. All right, you may have just sold some books.
Cool.
A complaint I hear from all of my family members, because I'm the only one in the house I think that hasn't. Well, David, I'm not sure if he read the books or not, but Tammy, Ethan, Katie have all read them, and we all love the movies. But every time we're watching the movies, I gotta sit there and hear them complain about all the stuff that got cut out. But they love seeing it visually as well. So a great way to adapt those books would be in that way to do that. And for someone like me or Damon, who doesn't like to read a lot, I think we talked about that last week, things that are really wordy, to do it in a little bit more of a straightforward, like a graphic novel type thing, would be a great way to do it, probably even better than just the illustrated version of the book. And you could really delve into it. There's so much there that you could almost make it a practically an ongoing series, and just little by little adapting and going through it and keep everything in there. And I think that would be kind of cool. I'd read it.
Cool.
And then if you run out of the Harry Potter, you could go on to the Newt stuff, Newt Scamander, that's coming out now.
Nude
movies. Newt.
Newt. N-E-W-T.
Newt.
You guys are like
salamanders.
making my 8-year-old dreams come true, because there's so many background characters in Harry Potter that I actually think are really cool, and I'm like, I want to read about that. And obviously they'd never make it into like the full book, but if we did with an ongoing comic series, like I'd be dropping money on that for sure. Just make my inner child very happy, because there's characters I need to know about and we just never do. So yeah, let's make this happen, you guys. I'm actually really excited about this idea.
Yeah, they
I
could
would
do
love to have a series on young Albus Dumbledore, even
that would
younger
be
than we're
interesting.
seeing in the even younger than we're seeing in the
Like when he was a student?
yes.
Or is that too far back? Okay.
fetus stage. Yeah, and like a 4-issue miniseries of who's that ghost girl that hides out in the bathrooms?
That's me.
Shelly?
Myrtle.
Yeah. Oh, the creepy like 40-year-old woman.
All right, let's go over to Damon. Do you have an answer for this one?
Yeah. I'd like to see a comic adaptation of a book I've tried to read several times. I used to read a lot when I was younger, and I've picked up this book at least 2 or 3 times, and I just couldn't finish it. And I
Clifford the
love
Big Red Dog. Oh,
Was that?
what?
No. And I love the movie, and I would love to see the comic adaptation of Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper. It was written in 1826. Supposed to be a great book. I just, for the life of me, cannot force myself through it. But I really love the movie. I think that would be a great comic book adaptation.
That would be.
Cool. David? Harry Potter?
Actually, I've got one for Anthony. And I know it's been done before, but maybe a new version, fresh take on it. I could see with some of his favorite talent jumping on board, because it's a movie that he just can't get through, and there's a whole bunch more to go through. But that would be all of the Lord of the Rings stuff in comic book form, not a condensed version that I think a lot of previous stuff has been, but something that's just really well translated into comic form.
A 300 issue series.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. And then Anthony could jump on board. Through a couple
I'm
names
like
he recognized.
freaking out. I need this.
I would probably read that. I usually say that about a lot of TV shows that people are saying like, oh, have you watched, the Blacklist or this or that? And I would just say I haven't, but if it came out as a comic, I probably would have read it. So, all right,
David, I'm
I think-
freaking out. I need this comic so bad.
That comic would be good,
Order
but
it
I
for
would
me.
love to see the Silmarillion stuff and the other ones
Yup.
that are based on the Silmarillion as a comic, because that has not been done enough in other media.
And it's really hard to read. I agree with you.
It is, yes.
That would be amazing. That would be so good. And that book itself is forever to get through. So, they could go like 200 issues, just Silmarillion stuff. Oh, too much excitement.
all right, Kirby.
All right, first off, Damon, they do have The Last of the Mohegans. It's a Barron's Graphic Classics. So you can look that up if you'd like. And then when I was looking at that, I just looking at my Bruce Lee statue. This isn't the choice I was coming up with, but I'd like to see the Toe of Jeet Kune Do, The Life and Times of Bruce Lee, and some other Bruce Lee things adapted into one long-going series because his life was so short. I think Shannon Lee could do an excellent job putting something together if she could work with like Mike and Laura Allred or someone and do a cool little comic series.
Well, let me call Mike and Laura while you continue.
You take care of that for us. Make sure we get our percentage. And then, but my thing that I was thinking of, I would love to see the book series by Warren Murphy that brought the Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins movie
My favorite movie.
into a coming.
Since you can't find the movie anywhere,
Perfect.
it is a comic.
Yeah. But I'd love to see it as a comic. They got The Destroyer, The Last Dragon. They have Assassin's Playoffs. They have Mafia Fix. They have hundreds of books in this series. And I've only seen the movie. I haven't read none of the books, but I'd love to see it. And that would be such a huge ongoing series they could put out.
Yeah, you got to read the books though; they're great. So.
But it's by Warren Murphy, I guess. So
I have read a few of them. They are good.
Yeah.
Cool. Now I know Katie kicked this off. Did it kick off with her recommending something? Did I miss that, or do you have something?
I do. So I think there's a whole bunch that would really do well in this format. I want to focus on a modern classic that I'm always a little embarrassed that I can't get through, and that's Frank Herbert's Dune series. I know that people love that book, that it is really foundational to modern science fiction, that it's a modern American classic, really important. I've tried reading it twice. I cannot get more than a third of the way through the first book, and I would really like to because I think it sounds really cool. And I feel like adapting, the original Dune books and then all of them, could be really well as a comic book series because it's just such a rich universe with a lot of characters, a lot of, imaginative lands and effects that, even still have not been, not even that they're not captured on film. I just don't know if we have the technology to do it. I guess we'll see with the new movie coming out. But I think that could do really well in, a comic book. There's a lot of material to really dive in and make it long running. And I just feel like it would help me a little bit better to to have that illustrated. So yeah, I'm going to go with Frank Herbert's Dune.
Great answer.
Artists could go crazy with that.
Oh my God, yeah, they really could. Have you ever seen any of the concept art for like in the late 70s, they were going to make a Dune movie with a totally different, company that ended up making it originally, and they had H.R. Geiger do some concept work on it. It looks nuts. It'd be a field day for some artist out there.
Imagine.
I with him, I can imagine it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jim?
Well, like I said, the one of the ones I would like to see would be Gone with the Wind.
Oh, yeah.
Another one would be War and Peace. That is a book that I have started a couple of times and just never been able to get through.
So you'd want both of them, War and Peace, adapted?
Sure, yeah. 2 volumes.
Good. All right, well, I think that was a fun second round of letters page there that spun out of the original question. So yeah, that is going to conclude our show. Next week, May 20th, I think is Wednesday. Am I mistaken on that? But I think that is when the majority of comics start coming out again. DC has been coming out over the last few weeks, so you have been able to get those. But things are going to be up and running slowly but surely as things are going to be catching up. So in the following weeks, we'll still continue diving into some back issues, but we will probably have a couple of more recent and new titles to talk about soon. So
now, going forward, when we talk about reviews, are we going to review books before? Like, if I'm able to get my book on Wednesday, but everybody else doesn't get it in the mail for another week, are we going to hold off on that, or?
Yeah, I think that'll be something we'll have to discuss on how that's going to work going forward. So
still be able to discuss it as long as you don't spoiler it.
Yeah, you might have to return to the non-spoiler, I guess.
Just keep the spoilers for the old stuff or anything that we do in a group.
So, yep, we'll talk about that in our club group and come up with how we'll proceed on that for the future. So, all right, that should do it for this week. This entire time, I wasn't Iron Lad.
I've been just sitting here.
I've been the slowest man alive.
I'm a high priestess of the Bene Gesserit.
And Jim.
Salud.
To be continued.